After 3 girls were shocked by the sight of a strange creature they called a devil, a bizarre web of seemingly intertwined encounters emerged from the city of Varginha. Today, we discuss the events from what many consider to be Brazil's Roswell, the Varginha UFO Incident. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the paranormal. I am your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me, hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
All right. We're talking about some aliens, some creatures. That's right up my alley. I'm excited. I want to know the features, the weaknesses, its list of abilities. That's just kind of how
I'm already thinking that you're going to box this thing, like he's got a weak chin on him. When am I going to strike,
Oh yeah, there's going to be a whole weigh-in and everything. You know what I'm saying? You're going to have to referee
face to face on the poster.
I love the possibility of monsters and creatures and aliens and anything that has to do with space.
Yeah.
So I'm all in. I'm excited because then you're saying it's kind of like a Roswell. So I think a Roswell is just yeah, sure, it's known for UFOs and aliens, but I feel like an underlining tone that kind of gets missed a lot with that stuff is also just a bed for weird stuff to happen.
Absolutely.
Or just weird tech. It's all of that stuff culminating together.
Of course. And then, of course, the government steps in. People cry conspiracy, but then you think, well, also the government has business to attend to. They don't want to reveal all the things they're doing. We covered Roswell in a previous episode, and that was one of the things that was so insightful, was diving into what could have been happening with the government, and did that get conflated with what people were seeing to create, like you're saying, this bed for people to then build stories off of. But
right.
I want, regardless, so desperately for there to be aliens. I don't want them to be violent. I want them to come down, give me some sort of, food pill and fancy gadget.
All right, some food pill and just shove something in your mouth. All right, already taking a gamble here.
I want them to have a giant leaf that they're wafting over me gently while they feed me food pills. And I no longer have to pay taxes, and I just kick back and, I get to live I don't know why they're coming here to serve me.
Right.
But listen, that's what they did in that Twilight Zone episode, to serve man. It's a menu. Anyway, this is a very interesting one because not only did Brazil have a lot of UFO sightings leading up into this, I'm talking 70s, 80s, into the 90s, including what we're going to talk about here happened in the beginning of 1996. So Brazil has a rich history of seeing UFOs, having alien encounters. We talked about something like this a long time ago with the lead masks case. But also in recent memory, right now, as of recording this in October 2024, there have been a continued high level of UFO sightings, a lot of them being debunked, but UFOs have been greatly on the mind both then and now. And so I feel like this is a perfect case to crack open, talk about what maybe created this encounter, this incident, but also look at some of the theories that maybe either disarm it as an alien encounter, or maybe add some fuel to that fire and say, maybe this was an alien.
I'm always about it.
Got to get that tangible evidence you love.
Yeah, it's always tangible crumbs. You know what I'm saying?
Tangible crumbs.
It's always tangible crumbs. It's never a whole cookie.
Right. It's like sand in the pocket. It's just not enough, dude.
It's not, man. It never is. And it never, it never will be.
Yeah. Well, before we dive in, I want to give a huge shout out to our task force members over at patreon.com/redweb. Of course, that is the best way to support this podcast. You get us ad-free, bonus, exclusive content. You got a whole podcast extra just for you called Movie Club, where we do the same kind of format, but about horror films. And to give a few shout outs, we have Alder Garibay, Ember Bear, Zachary Orr, Azrael, Zarathustra, and Alex Tuck, to name just a few. Thank you all, task force members. Appreciate you. But with that said, let me take you back to Varginha in January of 1996. The Varginha UFO Incident is the name given to a series of events and sightings that began, like I said, in January 1996. This collection of incidents was identified and connected together by citizens of none other than Varginha, Brazil. So Varginha, we're going to talk a lot about this place, but just so you can know where it is on the map roughly, it is a city in the southeast of Brazil, in the state of Minas Gerais. It's about 300 kilometers or 180 miles from Sao Paulo, which is the most populous city in Brazil. Now, on January 13th, 1996, there was an ultralight pilot named Carlos de Souza who saw a strange object above Varginha while he was in flight. De Souza was flying to go to an ultralight plane demonstration. Ultralight flying does not require a pilot's license, so this doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who is very familiar with aircraft. Ultralight aircraft, just so you know, is a very small, sometimes motorized go-kart on wings is what it looks like, but then there's fancy ones. They're basically just lightweight and small size aircraft.
Oh, okay. Go-kart on wings. I'm like, is this some kind of Disney Channel movie?
Yeah, it's like a paraglider, but you got like just a very small chassis under it.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of wheels and pipes and a dream.
Yep, pretty much.
So while he's in flight, he's going to this demonstration. He claims he saw a strange flying object, and it was shaped like a cigar and about the size of a school bus. The craft appeared to be falling and was covered with white smoke billowing from it. And later in 2022, there was a documentary that we're going to talk about quite a bit named Moment of Contact. Now, in this documentary, he compares the movement of this object to a broken washing machine. De Souza believed that whoever was piloting this unknown aircraft might need help. He hadn't at this point identified what it was, so he decided to follow it, and he ended up at the crash site for this aircraft. And when he got out of his ultralight, he got to the crash site, he saw metal debris and claimed that the area smelled like rotten eggs, which, as always, to me, reminds me of the smell of sulfur, which will come up a little bit later. Now, per that same documentary, De Souza said that the aluminum-like metal found at the site would return to its original shape when he tried to crumple it. Now, this detail is uncannily similar to the reports from witnesses at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, where a supposed alien spacecraft also crash-landed and debris was recovered along with an alien body. We cover this case in detail in a previous episode, but suffice to say, some of the witnesses at Roswell described the metal for that aircraft as lightweight, pliable, and with a memory of its own. This is one of the few times I've heard of a detail like this, Fredo, where someone sees something mysterious, it crashes, they take the metal, they crumple it, and when they open their hands, it reforms out back into that smooth, original shape.
But we do have materials that do that, though. You know what I mean?
Like shrinky dinks.
What the hell is a shrinky dink?
They go to their original form, but a lot smaller.
Shrinky?
You ever see Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yeah.
It's like that, but with not people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Google's giving me a better picture of what shrinky dink is than like that, but not people.
Listen, it's like Rick Moranis, but not people.
Got it. I mean, yeah, so rinky dinks then. I mean, that works.
Yeah, no, but you're right. There are somewhat of metals that kind of like you can crumple and they'll kind of go back to their original form. It's not super alien. You're totally right. But it is a detail that isn't often associated with UFO sightings, kind of except for Roswell in my memory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming back to the crash site and De Souza, he continued examining the wreckage. He says military personnel stormed the area while he was there and he was forced to leave. Now, before we move on to other encounters, I do want to say it's worth explaining that De Souza's experience has faced criticisms from the community. Not all believe that his encounter was directly related to the later sightings of the Varginha UFO incident. To be clear, this happened on the 13th, and many of the other sightings happened a week later on the 20th, and we'll get into the initial story that kicked this all off, but I wanted to give this in a orderly timeline, like a chronological order, but this isn't the first story that came out, if that makes sense. So it has faced criticisms for maybe being either made up or copycat kind of thing, etc.
Interesting.
But when it comes to the military, they believe that maybe he did see something, but whatever it was simply something more mundane. An experimental aircraft, a weather balloon. Again, very Roswell in that sense.
That's where my mind is at.
Moving into the next story, we have farmers Eurico and Aurelina de Freitas that lived just outside of Varginha. Now, this one is a very classic UFO alien style sighting, and honestly kind of creeps me out to think about it. But on January 20th, 1996, they were woken up by their disturbed cattle. Again, they were farmers. And this was around 1:30 a.m. that night when they hear their cattle rustling, kind of running through their farm area, making a lot of noise. And so they step outside to see what was going on. And this is when they reportedly saw an aircraft around that same time. And it was very similar to eventually what D'Souza claimed he saw. Now, I have a photo of this couple on their property for you. This is after the situation had happened, when further investigation kind of came to meet them. But this is where they saw the aircraft, and they're pointing to where it went. But it did head towards Varginha, is what they were kind of indicating.
Okay. Image A?
Yes. And Task Force, as always, these images will be on our social as well as our YouTube video upload.
All right. Yeah. We got to get some good photos right here.
Mm-hmm.
iPhone, Motorola Razr type stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's the couple.
Mm-hmm.
They're pointing, it's a clear sky. You know, it's all just pointing at a bunch of like land beyond with some buildings. Just pointing where they saw it. I mean, it's a clear sky, a lot of land. You can see some stuff.
Right. And it's rolling hills, but otherwise relatively flat. So you're going to see something come and go for quite some time.
Yeah.
Now, it is worth noting, because I wanted to make sure that none of these stories were just copying from each other, as has been claimed at D'Souza's story. But when they reported this, they had no idea that anybody else had experienced anything. Again, they aren't the first people to report sightings of something strange, but they reported it agnostic to anything else happening to others.
Could you imagine, say that like the three of us went to a building and we saw something happen, and then we reported it, and then all of a sudden all these other people were reporting what we saw.
That'd be weird.
It'd be weird and a little frustrating.
That'd be very weird.
I'd be like, you weren't
Well,
there.
hold on. What? That might be tangible. That's called proof.
I don't know. If we were like 3 floors underground and we saw something happen in a room, and then all of a sudden we started reporting it, and other people were like, yeah, me too, man. I saw that too. I saw the same thing happen.
Yeah, man with like 5-foot long fingers.
Yeah. Oh God.
Creeping around.
Jesus.
Daddy long fingers, we call him.
Yeah.
Oh, the whole town's seen him now.
Yeah, he's running away from him because his fingers are always lingering. He's in a spot.
What's more frustrating, though, is it if you claim it and then suddenly everyone else has a story? Or is it if you bring it up and they had already brought it up themselves independently somewhere else?
I don't think that frustrates me at all. I think it'd be frustrating if like you had a very personal solo experience that no one else could have experienced, right? And you're just like, hey, this happened to me. And all of a sudden people are like, yeah, me too. Same thing. And I'm like,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. Listen, I was terrified. You're stepping on my space. You don't look so terrified. You look excited.
I was 3 floors underground in this room.
Okay.
And you're telling me that you experienced that same thing?
I got you. Yeah. See, I thought it was like the De Freitas, where it's like, oh, I saw this. That kind of freaked me out. Oh, wait a minute. They saw it. They had already reported it, and I just didn't know. That kind of validates it.
Oh, no. This is like just like copycats that I just putting myself in that situation. I'm like, man, that must be so frustrating if like everyone else is like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
This is real. This happened. Stop trying to just like inflate this and make it seem less real.
Right. You're fumbling my terrifying long-fingered experience.
Yes. I'm the one that saw the long fingers.
Yeah. And so suddenly authorities are going, sure, you saw long fingers anyway. And they kind of...
Yeah, we've had 12 reports today of the same long fingers.
And you're like, no, man, there's a guy down there. You got to figure this out.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. The description that the De Freitas gave was quite similar to many of the other people who saw this UFO. And in fact, according to local news source Sol de Minas, Eurico said, quote, the object was very low and kept getting lower and lower. It was long, the size of a bus, with some moving objects. It covered everything in smoke, clear smoke, end quote. And Oralina, his wife, said it moved slowly, was covered in smoke, and made no noise, and had no light of its own. Which I think is super eerie. If your cattle are panicking, you go out at 1:30 a.m. and you see this dead quiet, enormous flying bus-sized objects with a clear white smoke billowing off of it. That's the start of an actual alien horror film to me.
Yeah, and I ain't about it. That's like some mist type stuff. You just gotta get out of there, man.
I see you going, it's off the horizon, and you go back to bed. Whereas I go, I'm hopping on the horse. And I got a horse in this situation. I hop on my horse and I chase it down.
Yeah. Do you know how to ride a horse?
I'll figure it out.
That's true.
In my excitement, it will come to me.
As all experienced horse riders have began their journey, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, dude. Paul Revere, that was his first time. The British are coming. They go, wow, look at him ride a horse. And I'm going to bring a 4K camera too.
I just imagine Trevor just going up to the horse. You and me, buddy. You and me, buddy. We're going to figure this out.
It's already, I look to the horizon. I look back. It's gone.
Gone.
Yeah. So citizens in the area, of course, had made various similar claims. But in addition to that, kind of later into the next day, almost 12 hours later, many people reported seeing military personnel looking for something, kind of active in the area. Military trucks were seen, people in military clothing. Some of them were wearing, as they're called, civvies, just normal, regular clothes, but had military haircuts. And it seemed that the bustle and hustle of it all, they were looking for something. And that was around 1 p.m. that day. And we'll expand on these rumors later as we discuss the next encounter. Now, 2 hours later, at 3 p.m., now we're in broad daylight, the most notable aspect of the case occurred, and this is actually the initial story to break. This is the first thing reported, but again, I'm giving it all in chronological order so we can kind of see how this feels from an outside perspective. Now, at 3 p.m., a group of young girls claimed to see a bizarre creature again that they called a, quote, devil. Two sisters, Lillian Silva, who was 16, and Valkyria Silva, who was 14, along with their friend Katia Xavier, who was 21, all reported what they saw to local news sources. Now, this interview aired on Brazilian television, so this immediately went from source to the entire community. Now, as their story goes, as they were walking in an empty lot between a couple of houses, they came across something crouched, quote, in a clump of weeds. Again, this was reported by Wall Street Journal. We do have an image of all three of them indicating where they saw this strange creature. So, Fredo, feel free to open up that photo.
I'm going to open up this photo.
There it is.
Yeah, they're just kind of hanging out next to a wall. This is where they claim to see it.
Yeah, it's like a cinder block kind of fence.
Yeah.
And some tall grass.
Yeah, it's really, really simple. But, I mean, it gives a visual of, like, this is where I saw it.
Right. Which is kind of nice. It's nice to be concrete in where these, okay, so this is where the UFO was seen. This is where the creature was seen. It adds some validity a little bit, but also without further evidence, you know, you got to believe.
Yeah. That's all it is. It's just like, this is where I saw it. And that's fine. I'm a visual person, so I like seeing that.
Yeah. So we'll continue to analyze this story and others, but depending on the sources, now this is where things start to get a little hairy, because as always, with some of these cases, sources have different information, especially when you have a lot of translation involved like this one. It was mostly reported in Portuguese, and so a lot of things get lost in translation, so to speak. So depending on the source, they say that the creature was anywhere from 8 feet upwards to 100 feet away from this group, this trio.
8 to, oh, okay. Yeah.
It's quite a range.
Yeah, that's a big range.
But some indicate it was very close. Others indicate it was kind of 100 feet's not too far away. You know, you're still able to make out what it is, but you might lose some details.
Yeah, it's still safe enough for me to feel like I could outrun the thing, though. So that's nice.
Right. You're out of striking distance.
Yeah.
But the trio said that when they saw this creature crouching in the weeds, it then turned to look at them, and that's when they realized that this creature was a small, hairless being. They described it as having brown skin, and it appeared to be covered in an oil, which is not the first that we'll hear of this. It also had red eyes and a large head with 3 distinct bumps on the top. And from the documentary, once again, the head was, quote, 3 times bigger than ours, they said. So if we're talking alien, it's got that gray alien look to it where it's got the big noggin. And regarding the eyes, they said, quote, quite big and red, end quote.
Big old head. I mean, look, anatomy-wise, big head could lead to a bigger brain.
True.
Which could mean more intelligent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a little terrifying.
Now, I do have a photo, which is one of the various mock-ups of what this creature might have looked like. It is the final photo, all the way at the bottom, if you want to take a look at that.
Oh, here we go.
But that's one rendering. I want you to get eyes on this creature before I continue with their description of the situation.
Okay, it's a terrifying sketch.
Think of the head being big.
The head is large. It's got like, I don't know, man, like 3 penis-shaped bulges that come all out his head.
Sure.
From the back to the front. It's got like eyes the size of a big pair of sunglasses.
Right, those are big.
And they're like a reflective kind of like orange. Small, tiny mouth, long, narrow nose. Those tiny too. Veiny. Veiny little guy.
Honestly, yeah, he's very vascular.
Very vascular. Terrifying. I don't know if it's quite threatening looking. You know what I mean?
Right.
I wouldn't want to throw hands with the thing, but I'm not looking at it like I'm getting knocked down, not round one.
Right.
To keep the boxing theme, you know?
Well, here's the thing. You can't tell where it's looking with those glazed over red eyes.
Yeah, you really can't. And like, if the three of us were standing in its line of sight, I'm hoping it's staring at Christian.
Oh, I'm sorry. What? Why? What?
That's what you kind of just hoping. You stand and we start to back up slowly, and you go, maybe, just maybe, he's pinpointed that man.
What you're saying is you hope the chair became the shield.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, look, it naturally is a shield. How many movies have you seen people pick up the chair?
That's true.
And then just start pushing back with a chair.
You sit in it like AC Slater, you know, and you kind of hold it up a little bit. It's kind of like a shield.
Yeah, naturally, it's a shield. So this is this is the kind of creature I don't know if I want to shake hands with it.
Here's the thing that stands out to me. Why do they always got to have these tiny baby mouths?
They really always have tiny baby mouths. Yeah.
They got big heads, big eyes, all the better to see you with. And then they got normal human, maybe even smaller mouths. So, you know, it'd take them about 2 hours to eat a Big Mac.
Yeah, it takes some time. And then for all you like alien freaks out there, they're like, oh yeah, I'd totally get it on with some kind of little alien creature. I don't know, man, making out with this little thing. This mouth is real tiny.
What is happening?
I'm serious though. You know, there's some people in the task force that like, if they're hot enough, I'm down. You know,
They're picturing it. They're thinking like, you mentioned those nobules on the head. You know, kind of like a bony kind of natural existing Rufio haircut situation.
All I'm saying is, if we get a sketch artist to draw just like a really fine male and female alien, you take a poll for task force, I think a good half of them are folding, bro.
Do you know what? They're collapsing to their knees.
I think so.
And I think task force, you know,
task force some freaks.
There's some freaks out there, but we also have some amazing artists. So I want you to close your eyes and draw what Fredo has described here today.
Oh, Lord.
And we'll come back to it. But here's the thing. Coming back to this trio, they also claimed that the creature seemed sick as it was kind of quivering. So it's not throwing hands, Fredo. You're good in the ring. It seems that it's unwell and shaky.
Yeah.
But it also looked as scared of them as they did of it. So there's almost like this moment of like a stalemate where they're kind of high-key terrified, but also like, wait a minute, do I feel bad? And then they got out of there.
Right, that's smart.
Yes, very smart. Self-preservation. They also noted the smell. And remember, all these details, this is the first reported situation, so I want to hang on all these details because they are the least tainted. They're not copy-pasted from somebody else. A lot of people are probably pulling from their story, if anything. But they noted the foul smell. They said it kind of compared to ammonia or sulfur. So the girls, of course, run home to their mothers, and they told them what happened. The Silva sisters' mother actually decided to brave up, very much like Christian's mother, and went to the scene. She visited the site with Katia herself about a half hour later, and the alien creature was gone. And the mother claimed to have seen a strange footprint in the dirt, indicating that something weird was there. Again, the documentary that we talked about earlier features her, and in that she says, quote, "I saw the creature's footprint. I'll never forget it. Only 3 fingertips." End quote.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be wild to see something like this.
Very.
It really would. It would shake me to my core. No one would believe me, which would be the most frustrating thing.
Right. And then a bunch of people would copy you and ruin the whole event. And
that's what I'm saying.
It's kind of Act 1 signs right now, where you don't know how to feel, you don't know what they're up to, but you know they're there. And that, I think, is the most terrifying moment.
I'm with you, as you said earlier, like, oh, I want to meet aliens. I want aliens to be real. It's just, I just feel like it's such a gamble on whether or not they would be friendly.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's just too much of a gamble, and I don't think it's a gamble humanity needs to take.
No, that's a wild gamble because, let's be honest, most people look around at the world and they forget the bugs they're stepping on. And is that how an alien might feel, you know, flying through these intergalactic planetary systems.
Damn.
Are we just kind of
Damn.
crushable little buggies?
I mean, that's some real,
Especially with their big heads.
that's some real talk. I did not think about that like that.
You know, you spray your house down and go, these thick little paths. And what if they come to Earth and spray it down and say, ooh, it's covered in things. It's covered in people.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
So, of course, after word spread across Varginha about the girls' alien encounter, more and more stories of strange events surfaced. De Souza and the De Freitas sightings were both made public weeks after the girls' story was publicized. Again, I believe the De Freitas story was independent of hearing anything else, but De Souza, like I said, had a little bit of skepticism surrounding it. And I want to be honest about some of the skepticism to follow, because there are a lot of other rumors that came on January 20th and in the months following. But again, the same day of their sighting, January 20th, there were other claims that military vehicles, like I kind of indicated, were driving around town at 1 p.m., 2 hours before the girls encountered their hairless creature. It seemed that they were looking for something or on a mission, possibly looking for this strange creature. In fact, some citizens also reported another UFO sighting around this very time. At least one person claimed to have heard gunshots, but that is a little flimsy depending on the sources that you want to find. But in general, citizens felt like there were more military personnel in the area than usual.
See, that stuff is tangible.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff where it's like, well, okay, if military is rolling through, a lot of people can see that.
Absolutely. And there has to be a purpose behind that. You're not just randomly kicking around a town before you head out again.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a balance scale, that's a little like a little piece of weight on the, I believe there's something going on here, because the military doesn't just assemble like that. There's a reason, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which most likely I would assume is just because they were testing something, or maybe something flew into our airspace that shouldn't, you know?
Yeah. Or maybe one of their own secret aircraft, and they're just kind of keeping tabs on things.
Yeah.
Or maybe it did go down and they wanted to kind of keep it hush.
Yeah. I mean, they gotta test stuff, right? They gotta test planes and everything like that. They gotta test, I'm sure they're testing ways to fly. I'm sure they're strapping all kinds of jet fueled mechanisms to soldiers' backs and seeing how high they can go.
Right. Right.
That does not surprise me.
Yeah, dude. I mean, at this time, even though it's the 90s, things are wild out there. But we've talked about it before. I mean, so many historical UFO sightings, like Project Blue Book, arose during a time where a lot of yet to be declassified stealth aircraft were being tested. And so I think that all of these stories are fascinating, and I want there to be a deeper truth that we just don't know yet. We don't have the evidence for, but I feel that military is involved only in a sense of, we are doing something, but we can't declassify it because, like Project Mogul, we're kind of keeping an ear on the Russians or the Soviets at the time, but we don't want to say that, but it's also not aliens, and people go, I'm reading between the lines, it's aliens. And so I think that all that kind of muddies the water, as I like to say, but within that, there's always some intrigue, and that's where I'm searching for those little sand grains of truth or, tangibles.
Yeah, I feel like that's the problem. There's a no-win situation, right? The goalpost is there, but people are gonna move it to meet their wants and their beliefs.
Yeah,
and that's just the dance that happens with this.
Absolutely. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Uncommon Goods. Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. The busy holiday season is here, Task Force, and Uncommon Goods is here to make it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. I really love Uncommon Goods. We've talked about them before. We've had them as a sponsor before, and they have so many good options. You can go to their website and filter it to the price you're looking for, the genre you're looking for. I got myself a murder mystery puzzle to do with my fiance. I also got an egg on bagel maker, which makes my breakfast sandwich in the morning immaculate and super convenient. So Uncommon Goods has a little bit of everything. Now, when you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses, much like Red Web. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches, so shop now before they sell out for the holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the US. They even have gifts that you can personalize, which is awesome. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/redweb. Again, that's uncommongoods.com/redweb for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary, baby. This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by BetterHelp. This month is all about gratitude, and there's one person we don't often get to thank enough: ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything in this crazy world, and that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to not only the people in our lives, but also yourself. You, task force member number 368B, okay, subset number 0, I see you. Now, therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries, both empowering yourself, but also helping you find a better version of yourself. This is where I really appreciate BetterHelp's service, because in my journey through therapy, it was very difficult to know where to start. I was very overwhelmed, and it became a barrier. So I didn't do anything to help myself. But that's where BetterHelp came in. It helped me approach it in a more digestible way to get my foot in the door of a very important process known as therapy. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and they're going to match you with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, which again is super important when you need to find the right person for your needs. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/redweb. One more time, betterhelp.com/redweb. Save yourself 10% on your first month. Now, another story comes from biologist Dr. Leila Cabral, who worked at Varginha Zoo. We're going to talk a lot more about her later as well, but this is where two stories collide. And I want to be very upfront about that because, again, as we try to analyze these things, we like to collate all the information for you, task force, and every now and then we do a light bit of analysis when things don't make sense, but I'll get to it when it becomes apparent. So she reported that another zoo employee told her the fire department had captured and contained a strange animal and wanted to show it to her, and only her, for further examination. Now, there were stories of locals seeing strange animals in the area that morning too, and the fire department had been called to investigate. According to Examiner News, a witness claimed, quote, "They said the animal they caught cried like a child," end quote. And supposedly this animal that they had recovered from the woods nearby was then taken to a local hospital. Regardless, it is said that the fire department captured an alien. That's kind of as far as that detail goes, but one of the flimsy pieces of the story is that it went to the zoo to be examined, and then in the months following, between February and April of 1996, 5 animals died inexplicably. And so a lot of people like to say that because of this alien presence at the zoo, these animals died because, again, the alien seemed sickly, so maybe there was a pathogen involved. And again, it highlights some of the frustrating inconsistencies in this case, but I'm going to come back to the zoo with another story in just a bit.
It's interesting, you know? But the thing is, it's also just like, well, why wasn't anyone trying to sneak a photo? You know, like
that's kind of what I'm saying. Like I would have loved to see a photo in here or a video.
I mean, you could argue that it wasn't quite the time. Like nowadays, everyone's snapping a photo of everything.
Sure, but 96 home cameras are a little bit more accessible. They are digital, so they look cruddy. But
yeah, we just weren't in that era of like everyone is filming, everyone is posting.
Yeah,
you know, that type of thing. So I could kind of see that. In terms of like animals dying, I don't know. It could have been just something that we know, and that's something that is accepted, which is like rabies or something.
True. Yeah. I mean, just because these animals died does not mean necessarily that an alien was present, nor an alien pathogen.
Right.
But again, this is where some of the story becomes flimsy, and you have to take it on faith that this is not a lie. But what makes that difficult, again, there's another story that has a different angle and a different timeline. But it does seem, I will say this, it does seem that 5 animals did end up dead of mysterious circumstances, and there is one with even more mysterious circumstance around that. But before we get to it, sticking to the timeline, there was one more rumor that I want to explore. And that came from someone who spotted 23-year-old police officer Marco Eli Scerezzi, who captured what became known to be an extraterrestrial. Again, Others say that they saw a corpse being brought to the hospital, though the medical staff themselves denied this. We'll maybe explore this in the theories. But either way, people have a heightened sense of attention right now, a lot of fear. And so anything they see that they don't fully understand, or maybe they're catching glimpses of things, it could be misinterpreted and immediately become part of the rumor mill.
Yeah, speculation's real high. Gossip is real high. That's just kind of the atmosphere that comes along with this.
It's par for the course. Yeah. But I think what really solidified this and built this more into the story is that in February, not long after the main sightings, Officer Sherezi went to the hospital, and he was hospitalized himself for pain and paralysis in his arm and an infected abscess in his armpit. He then unfortunately passed away in the hospital on February 15th. In the documentary, Moment of Contact, a cardiologist, Dr. Cesario Lincoln Furtado, claimed, quote, "We took him to intensive care and did all the treatments, but he died from an undetermined cause, a case unknown at the time by us doctors," end quote. So again, this further fueled conspiracy theorists who believe that he may have been exposed to some kind of alien pathogen. And when combining this with this new trend of animals passing away from the zoo, people started to believe that anybody that was in close proximity to this creature or touched it might become infected or might pass away. There's not much more information on Sherezi, but we will talk a little bit more about him in the theories. But a lot of what we do have, to your point, comes from not so unbiased sources, UFOologists. But to close out on Officer Sherezi, according to Sol de Minas, the news source, the official cause of death was pneumonia.
Okay. Like the key word I was hanging on to was like it was caused by like an illness we didn't know of at the time. So I was like, is that so there must be some kind of like theory that comes along later.
Yeah, but I mean, like, someone eventually reported that it was pneumonia, and that's not a new illness. And so it is interesting that one of the cardiologists is saying, to your point, we don't know what it was. And I think that only added fuel to the fire. But we'll talk about some inconsistencies around his particular situation. He might not be so much involved with the UFO as this story seems to indicate, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to like debunk all these things outright, but I have to be honest about some of the inconsistencies that we see when we collate this information. But with that said, I do want to jump back to Dr. Leila Cabral, who was center to another rumor. And these stories actually come from the book UFO Crash in Brazil by Dr. Roger K. Lear. This is a book that I gave you a photo of, a screenshot of, so you can kind of see what the cover of that looks like. This book is really interesting because he and his team went to Brazil, treaded the footsteps of all these stories, interviewed people, and tried to get as many details as possible, not only from the stories, but then also analyze the details and the science and everything. And so there's a lot of extra information there. But again, it has different details at times that create conflict with other sources. And that's where this story comes in. On April 21st, 1996 at 9 p.m., 67-year-old Teresina Gallo Klepf saw a strange figure while smoking on a porch at a restaurant in Varginha Zoo. She claimed the figure was about 4 meters or 13 feet away from her and had dark brown shiny skin and enormous glowing red eyes. This being, she said, lacked visible facial features except for a thin line for the lips. And notably and uniquely, she describes it as wearing a golden helmet covered with 3 protrusions on its head. And so maybe this is like an external device that the creature is wearing, if it was a pilot, let's just say, and those 3 bumps are for its natural skull formations that we talked about earlier.
I mean, interesting, vivid, the thing is, like, you want to believe that multiple people are seeing these things, but it's hard to just be like, well, are they just copying from what they've seen already? That's
what I'm worried about, if I'm being totally honest.
I would love to like have a situation like this go down, grab people separately, put them in a room and interview all of them. You know, like
yeah.
Obviously, it's a big wish, pie in the sky type of situation, but man, would it be cool to be on the other side of that like one-way glass to just hear different stories and see if they all line up.
Yes.
Also kind of terrifying though, if you were to like just round people up that night right after the incident and everyone's stories start lining up. That's a little terrifying.
Yeah, I might be wanting to get out of town at that point. But yeah, I mean, so a lot of these stories can be just that. And I think what makes them stick so well is the surrounding circumstance. For example, Officer Sherezi, I mean, we saw him transporting a body into the hospital. Maybe that was an alien. Well, that's not much to go off of, but then with his unfortunate and untimely death not too long after, that's what I think for a lot of believers reaffirmed it. And what reaffirms Mrs. Klepp's situation here is that 12 days later, per this particular rumor, it is said 5 animals at the zoo mysteriously died. So again, we have this very same detail used to substantiate a different story. And so again, this is 5 of the similar animals, if not the same animals, that died this time instead of over the course of February to April. They all died in early May in a short time period. This is one of those things that helps this stick in the minds of many believers.
Yeah.
And this is where Dr. Layla Cabral comes in per this book. And she is kind of looking at these 5 animals that have since suddenly passed. And she actually finds a, quote, caustic substance on one of the deer tissues. While the cause of the death of the other animals remain unknown, this caustic substance, this acidic material that was eating away at the flesh, kind of stood out to her. And this was confirmed by the current zoo director, Marcos Mina, who told Sol de Minas that all animals exhibited the same symptoms. In their necropsies, a blackening was seen on the intestines, and he even considered that they may have been poisoned in some way, which is completely viable. But suffice to say, if there was a creature, an alien perhaps, walking around at this zoo, and it was sick as the trio of girls indicated earlier, then this kind of connects pretty well, I guess, that maybe some sort of pathogen infected these animals and maybe they died of mysterious circumstances, and maybe it's the same thing that got the officer. That's what's really built up in the minds of believers. But again, it's the details that cross over too much that prevent me from wanting to just openly trust it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. Because obviously we're all listening, we're shooting this and you guys, task force are listening to this. So there's a part of us that wants to believe. Right?
Oh, I desperately want to believe.
But it's also, we have to have some type of evidence, like for me, I gotta be a little skeptic because then otherwise I'm believing everything that's happening,
Right.
Especially nowadays, like the internet and everything, it's just very difficult to believe anything. Especially, oh god, dare I mention it, AI,
dude,
just getting stronger and stronger.
Right. And then when it builds its own body that looks like an alien, and we go, it's an alien, but it's actually AI walking around. Oh, that'll happen.
You know what? I feel like that's more likely to be something that happens. Because see, now it's we have all these different stories and, sometimes it's someone made something or whatnot, like the Loch Ness Monster.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get to the point where these AI robots start becoming a household thing and then people just dress up the AI robots. And I just feel like, oh God, sightings could get so convoluted at that point.
Dude. And they're going to start moving weird because robots can move in very uncanny valley ways.
Yeah.
And so you can get some clown-looking thing hidden in the woods, moving I don't know, just some sort of freak way, or
right.
It bends over backwards and walks Exorcist spider style.
Right. I feel like, oh no, are we going to start going down a path where AI just starts making things very muddy for everyone?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
That's not what we need.
We got to talk about that in the dead internet theory, which, kind of started as a joke. And then 10 years on, it's this actually kind of, maybe it's onto something. I don't know.
Right, exactly.
But here's the thing. Some of these cases, I hate to be the downer and doubt the whole way. Some of it, I try to wait until the theories. But I think we'd be doing a disservice by discussing this with full authenticity if we noticed in our research that there were inconsistencies and honestly doubt whether it be at that time in 96 or even to this day. We got to be honest about some of those things, even if it flies in the face of finding me a true cold-blooded alien.
Right.
There's been a lot of other stories around this, talking about that zoo creature that was supposedly seen. A similar creature was reported later by university students near the same location of where the UFO sighting had initially occurred earlier that year. And interestingly, you also have, and I want to highlight this story because I think it's important to address how some people are wanting this evidence to lean a certain way. I know you indicated that earlier, but you have Spanish UFO investigator J.J. Benitez, who visited Varginha in November of 1996. And he actually angered many Brazilian UFOologists by neglecting to contact any of the original investigation team, any of the original witnesses, and he went on his own, which is kind of okay, but if you're going to start publishing about this, how are you going to not talk to anybody? He claims he went to the pasture where the UFO supposedly landed. A lot of people believe that they saw a landing there, and some stories claim that the vegetation died. Again, once again, building this alien pathogen story we'll talk about in a second. But he went there, and he said he found 3 holes in the pasture arranged in a triangle pattern, and he suggested this of being full-blooded evidence of UFO proof that it's been here, it landed, I'm heading home, and I'm reporting on it. But upon further investigation, 2 holes were determined to be dug by a post-hole digger, whether it was him or somebody else, and the 3rd hole was none other than an anthill.
Oh.
And so this is where I feel it's important to, it's not the fun story, but you got to report on all of it, because this is one of the things that it flies in your face as far as the falsehoods. And so some stories could be maliciously false, purposely hoaxful. Some could be misunderstandings, and some, like the initial story from the 3 girls, the young women there, that could be true. But because your frustration, like we talked about earlier, maybe all these other people saying, oh, I also saw it, do nothing but invalidate it.
It does.
And so that's where I'm like, I loved their story, I want to dig into that. And now it's just like
everyone's got a story to tell, because everyone wants to be a part of it, man. It wants to be, it's just human nature, and it's just unfortunate. And I didn't even think about that. Like, it's just frustrating if you were to experience something that's very personal to you that really couldn't be experienced by anybody else, and then all of a sudden everybody's jumping on board saying that they experienced the same thing, and it's just like, great, now you just invalidate what my experience was, which was very real.
Right. You're trying to get on the news. I was scared.
Yeah.
But with that said, and again, this is a very hair-pulling case because some of the stories are so cool, and some of them are like JJ Benitez, where you're like, come on, man, just get out of here.
Right.
But this brings us to the theories, where a lot of interesting things are left to be discussed. So, of course, as we heavily indicated throughout this episode, an alien pathogen being a real factor is, of course, one of the purveying theories for this case. And it's possible that if aliens did in fact visit Varginha, that they brought some sort of pathogen with them. This would explain the urgency to capture them and bring them to hospitals or the zoo for study. It could possibly explain the smell of the aliens reportedly making people sick in the area, killing vegetation, things of that nature. Of course, we have, unfortunately, Officer Sherezi's illness and his surgery that then led to his early passing. I mean, he was quite young. And a lot of this was claimed to be because he was scratched by the alien he was handling. And of course, the 5 animals that died similarly but totally separate in the zoo. Whether it is over the course of months or in May alone, either way, it happened. So that's enough for a lot of people to go, well, whatever the story is, there's some fakes in here. But I believe an alien pathogen happened or came to this town. That's what a lot of people settled into.
That's what makes this story interesting. If you start, just kind of blindly start trying to believe a little bit of it, it's just, you don't really hear about that. Like, who's to say that they're not bringing, I mean, look, when you travel across countries, they do a check for like, what kind of fruits are you bringing, right? Because there's like different fruits and parasites that could travel and then be an issue for different countries.
Right.
And you got an alien that's like galaxies and planets. They're like, Jesus, like you'd have no idea what kind of like biome that they live in or whatnot, and then all of a sudden that gets brought to Earth, and how is that gonna, I mean, man, the science and like the molecular structures of everything combining and assembling and possibly reassembling or duplicate, it's endless, right?
Yeah.
And so like we don't really think about that. Aliens come here, even if they are friendly, who's to say they're all of a sudden not just throwing out some kind of virus that we can't handle? What if their common cold is like a mega cold for us, and all of a sudden you're boom, done.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what happened in, yes, it's fiction, but War of the Worlds. That was a concept where they came here, they started wrecking us, but some poor chap with a runny nose wiped them out because our cold went to them. I'm always curious. I'm not like a virologist, but I'm curious how, if aliens are completely distinct from humans, how likely it is that a virus or a bacterium can leap species like that.
Right.
Because, they say like we share 98% or whatever of our DNA with bananas. I haven't gotten banana flu yet.
What? I did not know that. So hold on. Part banana?
Googling. Okay, 60%. Okay, I didn't mean to go as hard as 98.
That's still...
I was exaggerating, but...
That's still a lot more than I thought it would be.
Right. I mean, we all have the same building blocks, essentially. But that leads us to the next theory, is that UFOologists believe that what happened in Varginha in 1996 was actually covered up by the government, similar to the conspiracy theories surrounding Roswell, New Mexico. When a strange metal object crashed onto the farm in Roswell, some felt that the military changed their story from an unknown craft to a weather balloon too fast, that there was a lot of disconnects on things, and multiple witnesses were claiming that they were told to keep quiet. Now, according to Examiner News, Officer Sherezi's widow told a local news outlet that she attempted to get access to her husband's medical records, but some were missing. Strangely enough, she actually told them, quote, "Nobody knew how to explain anything. I was always looking for an explanation, but no explanation came. None." End quote. And I do think that that's unfortunate. I think that there's a gap in the knowledge there that is not only deeply upsetting for her and the family and everyone else who deserves closure and answers, but also from the rumor mill of it all. It's immediately going to be filled with conspiracy, theory, and whatever. Let's immediately inject that gap of knowledge with aliens.
Yeah, you can't be quick to that. You really can't. It invalidates the story, the theory, and kind of everything else you say at that point, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. But UFOologist and author Vittorio Paccaccini claimed to have video evidence of Army soldiers in civilian attire and described the details of how they were disposing of alien bodies, or at least one alien body. Paccaccini would not reveal the names of the soldiers because they all feared retaliation. However, this footage has never been made public. So again, it's something you got to take on faith, but it is interesting because it is that tangible evidence we're looking for. It's said to exist, but we're not seeing it.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're not seeing it. During those times, it's kind of like, uploading was a whole difficult thing. If you wanted to record something, it was difficult, right? It was a whole rigmarole. It's not like today where you just push a couple buttons and something is automatically on the internet.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, man. It's not nowadays or something is on the internet, it's spread. It's like impossible to keep it off the internet.
Right. It'll spread before you can take down the original.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's going to see it.
Yeah. So.
Well, what's interesting is that in 2012, he said, and I don't know if this was the same video or a different one because, again, he's a UFOologist and author. In 2012, he said he was shown a 35-second film of this same creature. And according to New York Post, he said, quote, "It had brown skin with an oil or grease on the body. It had a big head with red eyes and no pupils. The face was like a reptile, like a frog with strange red eyes, 3 times bigger than ours, and 3 protuberances on the top of its head." End quote. And he also claimed that it seemed like it was close to death and that it made sounds similar to a bee buzzing. So again, this is a very similar description of what we've been seeing so far. I want to see that video.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I feel like it'd be, you see that and all of a sudden the government's banging on your door,
Yeah, but that's the thing. And that's kind of why he fled Brazil, because he said he felt threatened, kind of bringing it all back to the government conspiracy cover-up of it all. He said he felt threatened after theorizing that the government knew that this is what was happening, that there was an alien in play in some way, and that they were kind of after him. And he claimed on 4 different occasions that other drivers tried to run him off the road. And these people might have been government plants. That's kind of his claim, his indication. And then in one case, one of them actually fired a weapon at him. And so, I don't know. It's a wild story if it's true.
Yeah.
But I think he can validate a whole lot if he just digitized that old film and
I know
uploaded it to ye old YouTube.
I know. Also, if you're getting shot at, Look, shooting a firearm is not as easy as cinema makes it look. But man, is there no like dent or mark on the car or something? You know?
Yeah, I mean, like that way we don't even have to know who it was or that it was the government. It's just, oh yeah, there's physical evidence of some sort of scuffle happening.
Right. Yeah. Because if someone's trying to run you off the road, I don't know. That feels like a very solid decision. You know, I want to run this person off the road. So there's some kind of there would be some kind of scuff on the car or something going on, like some sort of damage or whatnot.
Yeah.
This is someone deliberately doing it as opposed to just like, oh my God, I almost got run off the road.
Yeah. No, like, and so that's a good point because there's been times where I've seen just wild drivers just around Texas. And I'm like, if I was paranoid, I could be like, yeah, that guy was after me because I know alien stuff. So was it actually like someone trying to run you off the road or was it, I don't know. We could go back and forth. It's wild. But so that's the kind of government cover up of it all. But then on the flip side, you have the government's actual official story. Because of course, following the media frenzy of the alien sighting, military spokesperson Captain Eduardo Calza told the Wall Street Journal that their work was all normal procedure and that nothing was out of the ordinary that day. In fact, he said, quote, "There is no evidence that an alien being has been captured in Varginha," end quote. And to that I say, of course you say that, Captain.
Of course.
Yes, I believe you, Captain. Wink.
Look, it doesn't have to be aliens. We all know the government doesn't tell us everything. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff that shouldn't be public information, right?
Right, there's classified levels for a reason.
Yeah, so it's just hard.
Like, I don't want to know what's in hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
It's important that that stays classified.
Yeah, I don't want to. No, I just want to keep sucking them down.
Whole, no chewing.
Oh, God.
So, as the official story goes, military vehicles were in fact driving around the area. And so this is valid. This is part of the story that either to some people validate the believing side or to the government is just part of the normal maintenance work in the area. Because that's what some of the vehicles were in the area for, is, quote, normal maintenance work in a workshop, end quote. Now, documents regarding the government's official investigation report were not made public until quite recently. And I guess this isn't an old case, but it was recent. In 2021 is when they came out. In these documents, they reiterated that Army activities were routine that week. They also claimed that instead of seeing an alien, the girls ran into a local homeless man named Mudinho. Or it could have been anybody. I gotta be honest, Mudinho's catching a stray here. Even if he is a smaller individual, more lean built, I don't know why it's got to be him. Yeah. Now, I do want to say, a lot of people have built on it being this individual, and there are photos of him online. I'm not going to put a photo of this guy up and say, look how alien he is.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what is implied. So out of respect and personal privacy, I wanted to explain what the government claimed, but I also think that there is totally room for the alien creature that they saw to be a person that they just misperceived, whoever that might have been.
Damn, that's... I mean, look, it could be, maybe, it could be someone in weird fashion or something like that. But also some people are tall and lanky, different, we're all different shapes and sizes.
Absolutely. People come in all shapes and sizes, and that continues on with their story. Basically, all they're trying to say is all of the sightings of creatures, whether it be at the zoo or at the hospital or where the girls saw it, is that it was a person of some kind and that it was just misunderstood. Now, what's interesting about the man Mudinho in particular is that the girls actually knew of him and knew what he looked like. So it's not like this is a stranger entirely. Like, they had seen him before, they were familiar with his features and the way he looked and everything like that. And they have themselves made repeated claims that he was not who they saw that day, that whoever or whatever they saw was a creature, not a human, and they maintain that. And that's where I find the most intrigue is in their initial story, because they stretch the ages of 14, 16, and 21. So yes, they're younger. They might not know what they're seeing, but they're not like they're not like 3.
Right. They're not toddlers.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, sure, they'll have a wild imagination, but it's not like instantly dismissible.
Right. And again, building on the official story here, and I think this part is particularly interesting and it required some investigation work on their end, is that regarding Officer Sherezi, the government claimed that there was no contact of any kind with aliens and him. His operation to remove the cyst was scheduled far before January 20th. And so this wasn't a reactionary surgery because he became ill because of some alien contact. No, this was scheduled earlier, and that, quote, the death occurred due to a strong hospital infection after the operation on the cyst. And to me, that says, okay, well, if this happened because of hospital negligence, right, a hospital infection because of the surgery, maybe the doctors don't want to be honest or forthcoming about that because they don't want liability. I don't know how all that works, but maybe that's why there weren't clear answers at the time.
Yeah, man, the thing is, there's so many different things that you could spin up for it.
Yeah.
Just like unfortunate, but that's just the way it is until you get like some hard proof, some hard evidence.
Yeah.
Or at least something enough to make you, to rattle you a bit, really.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, and enough unknown happens in a tight time frame where some really strange things are hitting the news, and you can't help but want to see patterns. Humans see patterns. And so maybe it all got pulled together into this mess, which kind of leads me to my last theory. And it's more of a broad strokes one. And oftentimes we talk about there being a hoax. I don't think that this was a hoax. A hoax to me is something that's like intentionally misleading, something to be done as a malicious prank. This feels like a wild and broad misunderstanding. You know, I do say that it is possible that the trio saw something strange that day. It is possible that the Freitas saw a UFO that day, and everything else around that could have just been misunderstanding. The stories maybe got publicized, and the portrayal of alien sightings could have led to people like De Souza or anybody else experiencing things or interpreting things in a certain way. In fact, we've talked about this in countless cases, whether it be Mothman or other UFO encrypted encounters. This could be a case of mass psychogenic illness, previously known as mass hysteria, where citizens become paranoid about the unknown and these high emotional things happening in their environment. And so, you know, you have a little bit of fear. And we talked about this a lot, in fact, with the dancing plague, people dancing themselves to death.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, maybe this is just something that took the town by storm. They weren't ready for it, and the lack of answers only made it spiral out of control more. And so misunderstandings begot misunderstandings. But to me, I'll be honest, as I want to believe, but there's a seed, a core to this whole thing that makes me go, it sparked off something. And it could have been a misunderstanding, or that could have been the real alien encounter. I don't know. That's the intrigue to me. But the rest, I do feel like is a big blown out misunderstanding.
Yeah, but there is enough there. I mean, there's right to make it, you know, something that it lands on an episode of Red Web, right?
Mm-hmm. Kind of like the origin of a ghost story when we talked about the Old House Woods. It's one of those things where clearly people are experiencing something.
Yes.
And yes, I'm going to cast my doubt on certain things when they don't align. But that said, something is happening. Something sparked this. And that's where the unknown element comes into play. And so, you know, I don't want to cast too much doubt over the course of the whole thing because I want to actually point to the mayor of Varginha, who believes something strange truly happened that January. There was a lot of circumstance surrounding it, but he told director of Moment of Contact, quote, I believe for sure that this case happened because so many events are connected. Suddenly you see the army in the city. Lots of people saw the army here. Then the death of a person who participated at the time, an ex-police officer, and the girls with whom I had contact. One was a nephew's girlfriend, so I am convinced that this happened. End quote. And that, I think, is what will stick with that community and many believers worldwide, because regardless of pulling some of the stories off the shelves because of the inconsistencies, there's so much intrigue and so much left unknown that add fuel to this unresolved case.
Yeah, I mean, you get the mayor saying like, hey, there's something here.
Yeah.
And usually, you know, that might be someone that the government would get to.
Sure, right. Set this straight. You know, mum's the word kind of deal.
Exactly. And more on the government side, but I don't, you know, when they're just like, nah, there's something going on here. It's like, oh, okay, hold on now. Like, damn, you know, it's just the little nuggets that you get.
Right, exactly. And this case is riddled with nuggets of intrigue.
It is.
Or the pocket sand of intrigue, I don't know. But this has been the Varginha UFO Incident. Fascinating case. Again, just like Roswell, even if we walk away feeling like we've debunked things or feel like we have answers, there's always that like little piece somewhere that remains unsolved. And that's why we do this podcast, because the world is fascinating. The way people interact with one another and these stories develop is fascinating. So if nothing else, it's cool to watch the development of an alien UFO incident. But also there's some wild stuff around here that, like the caustic things on the animals and the animals suddenly passing away. Like, I'm very curious about that, because I want to say the zoo was investigated and it has since, I think, been abandoned. I think it's overgrown.
Oh, wow.
The author of that book went and checked it all out. And I don't know. Like, I wonder what actually happened there and if it was just bad timing or what, but I don't know. Any final thoughts?
I just feel like there's just a little event that happened. I don't know what the event was, and then it kind of just the place ran wild.
I think if I'm ever a ghost, I'm going to show up in an alien form to one person once a decade and then disappear.
Just to cause a ruckus, just to be a menace, huh?
I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of menace throughout society. And maybe that's what's happening here. That's my new theory. Aliens are just real prankster ghosts, you know, them poltergeists, but on another level. Detached from a house, they're just out there in bushes, squatting, looking like aliens, going with their tiny mouths and then disappearing.
That'd be so damn annoying if that's just what their purpose was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it would be. But we don't have the Ghostbusters yet, so
No.
we just got to deal with it. All right, well, this has been Red Web Task Force. Thank you all so much, as always. If you want to support us, like I said, patreon.com/redweb. We have so many goodies every single month, exclusive podcasts and bonus videos for you guys. Last month, Christian's mom went to the Villisca Axe Murder house, recorded some audio, and we reacted to that. It was very interesting. We did the Randonautica app, so we went out into the broad daylight. Like Fredo said, we touched grass.
Oh, yeah.
And we covered that app a long time ago. But yeah, a lot of other fun little bonus contents you get there exclusively for supporting us. And also store.redwebpod.com. We got all sorts of fun merch items over there if you want to represent us year round and just cozy up. We're going to try to put together some winter stuff here soon. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.